Welcome back. It was a horrifying incident that made headlines across the country. A beloved 73-year-old librarian shot dead at the Citizens Training Academy by a police officer holding a gun that should have never had real bullets. Officer Lee Cole was fired and is facing manslaughter charges. Now he is suing his former department, claiming he suffered post-traumatic stress from the incident and should be entitled to a disability pension. Joining us for more is Anthony Schembri, former New York City Corrections Commissioner, former Florida Secretary of Juvenile Justice, and most notably, the basis for the hit television show, The Commish. And Sarah Blackwell, an employment attorney in Sarasota, best known for exposing Disney's efforts to replace American IT workers with foreigners. We scrimp at nothing here at the Trapezoid. I think I have this right from both of you, but correct me if I'm wrong. You're not saying there was anything wrong in terms of the legality of what Punta Gorda did in terms of severing this police officer and making a decision about his benefits, but your position is that they should have waited until after the trial because anything could happen at trial?
Yes, I think he should have waited because under Florida law, Section 782, causing the death of someone by accident or misfortune while performing a lawful act without criminal intent is an excusable homicide.
And as we know, anything could happen at a trial. I mean, but how often, given this kind of fact pattern, would it be likely for the officer maybe not to be found guilty, but to be in a position to reclaim his position?
His charges of manslaughter have nothing to do with the due process and what he is permitted with his job. I mean, what he is required to receive from his job is under a Florida statute, which says he needs a proper investigation, proper notice, he is allowed appeal. It has nothing to do with whether he's charged or convicted with manslaughter. They're two completely separate issues.
But don't we often see cases, whether it's somebody in law enforcement or another line of work, where they are charged criminally with something, found not guilty, and have to go back to the position that they held before?
What they said on appeal, because he appealed it, and what they said on appeal was that he did not have the community trust, which was an essential function of the job. And they said that just because other people were, or other police officers were involved, that isn't a reason for him to get his job back. They never said that the reason that he lost his job is because of the pending manslaughter charges. I mean, unless there's some information that we don't have, he was terminated completely and wholly separate and unrelated to his manslaughter charge.
In New York, I had 30 days to bring an officer up on charges and fire him and dismiss him. And if I didn't do it in 30 days, he comes back to work, and I got to pay him.
Well, let me ask you two questions. In New York, as opposed to Florida, or maybe it's still true in Florida, is the collective bargaining and union rules, the agreements that the union makes with the municipality,
right.
Do they basically rule on issues like this in terms of what is a fireable offense? I mean, could confidence of the community in and of itself be something that an officer in another jurisdiction could be fired for?
You can't look at that. The question is, there's enough for him to lose his pension, but not, there's enough for him to lose his job, but not his pension. So that's a contract obligation, and that's what you have to look at.
Right. So, Sarah, as far as you can see, where does the process go from here?
As far as his termination? His termination, he appealed it, which was his right. After that, if he doesn't agree with the appeal, he has the right to file a writ of certiorari with the court, and the court can either accept it or deny it. I have not seen that he's done that. As far as the disability pension, he applied for that and was denied because the basis of the denial was that he filed for the disability pension after he was already terminated on a non-disability issue. So that was the denial.
Okay. We are just getting warmed up, and we'll have much more on police benefits right after we check the first alert weather. Stay with us. Welcome back. Should a fired Punta Gorda police officer charged with gunning down an elderly woman at a police training academy get disability pension for PTSD as a result of the incident? Joining us for more is Anthony Shrembry, former New York City Corrections Commissioner and former Florida Secretary of Juvenile Justice, and Sarah Blackwell, an employment attorney in Sarasota, best known for exposing Disney's efforts to replace American IT workers with foreigners. And Commissioner, let me ask you this. I mean, have you been in a position, especially when you were in New York, whether you had to put an officer back on the job who had not only just broken department rules, but maybe faced legal sanctions?
Yes, we under the contract rules, we had 30 days. We had to bring him up on charges, prove it, and convict him within 30 days. If not, he gets returned to duty with his pay.
Right. And Sarah, how would you describe what Punta Gorda did here in terms of Officer Cole, in terms of how quickly they moved and how legally binding you think this is going to be?
For the termination or the disability?
Both.
Well, for the termination, they did an investigation. I mean, the incident took place in 2016. He wasn't terminated until 2017. It seems like they did a complete investigation. When the officer appealed it, to my knowledge, he didn't say that there was anything wrong done in the investigation. He was provided the notice about his termination, and then he had the right to appeal, which he did, and he lost the appeal. So I believe that that was all done properly. As far as the disability, he was denied as being unqualified. They never, as far as my understanding, they never got to the actual merits of the case, like does he have post-traumatic stress, and does it qualify under the statute to give him disability pension? It doesn't seem like they even got that far.
You were saying when we were in the break that the issue here is, first he tried to get his job back, and then when he didn't, he claimed disability, that he could not perform the duties of a police officer, and that weakens his appeal at this point and his legal action going forward.
Right, even if he could bring a disability claim, to qualify, he has to show that he's wholly prevented from acting as an officer and that his disability is continuous and permanent. And he's claiming post-traumatic stress as his disability. But after he was terminated, he appealed it and said, no, wait, I want to work, I can work. And then when he lost that, he's filing for disability, saying, I qualify and I'm wholly prevented from actually doing the job, and it's continuous and permanent. So that's going to be a really hard argument to make.
Anthony, I would imagine that there's a good number of people who are watching this conversation tonight who say, look, this officer may have messed up. You know, he is going to face criminal charges in a trial, presumably later this year. But you know what? He was a hardworking police officer who put his life on the line, and no matter what is done in terms of the legal system, why are you taking his pension away from him?
Well, you know, when it comes to post-traumatic stress incapability, I can understand that. I've been with officers and families when they've cried a river of tears taking somebody's life by accident. So my sympathy goes out to him, even when you kill somebody that's justifiable. But killing a totally innocent person, you know, my sympathy goes out to the officer when it comes to that. I can understand that, but certainly there was some culpable negligence here, someone handing him a loaded gun with wad cutters instead of blank bullets.
You know, we were talking about this before the show, and I know you read up on my background, and I went to the FBI Citizens Academy up in Tampa, which has a similar type of shoot, no shoot drill, but it's done in a simulator. Your point is that a lot of these local police departments are trying to do this because it's, you know, it's good community involvement, but you question about whether some departments should be doing this on a really local level.
I think looking at how many shootings they have and the reaction that the community has would warrant such a program. I don't know why they would do something in small departments. These kind of shoot, don't shoot programs should really be done in large departments where the community is outraged over excessive use of force, shootings, Chicago, LA, New York. those are the kinds of programs that help you deal with the community by showing that the decision to shoot and use force, deadly force, is something that it's a hard thing to determine.
Right.
Can I
Sure.
just say, nothing's been taken from him. He applied for it and didn't receive a disability pension. We're not talking just about a general pension. We're talking about disability, so nothing was taken. But this is a police officer who was fired from another police department because of 2 excessive force problems. Then he also, at this police department, had stopped someone on a bicycle, sent the canine dog after him, and the department ended up paying $60,000 of our tax money because of this. And then over $2 million went to the family of this poor woman who died. I mean, that's a lot of money we've already spent out, and now he wants more money because of his sadness.
Let me ask you this question. How can you take into consideration, in terms of this process, because of this case, prior bad acts, whether it is in his department in Punta Gorda or elsewhere where he has served? I believe he served in South Florida.
Take into account for the termination, for sure, but for the disability, I wouldn't think it would come into
How often
account.
do you come across cases, whether or not it's you're defending a law enforcement officer or a police department that is trying to terminate them, or in other lines of work where these kinds of issues come up?
Well, it usually comes up in the due process aspect of whether or not the employee is getting the rights that they are due under the law. Generally, employees are employees at will. They are not given any rights. They can be fired for any reason as long as it's not an illegal reason. But for government workers and for police officers, they do have what's called a property right in their job, and it can't be taken away without due process. So the police officer likes to make sure that their rights are being protected, and the police department needs to know that they're doing everything by the book.
Anthony, we only have a couple of moments left in this segment, but how are the rules changing in many police departments, given how labor agreements change and police departments are going back and forth with unions?
Well, the DNA of policing is changing. We once fought crime, now we protect and serve. We once trained police officers to use deadly physical force, now we teach them when not to. We train in self-defense, now we train on de-escalation. So what's happening in policing is a time of change. So there is also a theory of culpability here called negligent retention. You negligently retain an officer, as Sarah said, that has a history of these kinds of things. You open your community to lawsuits here.
Right, and apparently you talked about bad acts beforehand. Maybe that is what the situation was in this case. We shall see. We have to take a quick break, and we'll be back for final thoughts in a moment. And our guests join us right now for final thoughts. And Sarah, so you now have 2 legal tracks. You have a criminal charge and a manslaughter charge that is pending a trial this year, but you also have Officer Cole's appeal and lawsuit against the police department. For
the disability pension, right, and they're totally separate. They have nothing to do with one another. The standards that need to be shown are totally different. So regardless of how the disability pension works out for him, the manslaughter charge to me should be the most important thing to him, because they will have to show culpable negligence beyond a reasonable doubt, which is culpable negligence is not that high, I don't think.
Right, but even if he is found not guilty of that, that will have no bearing on his disability pension.
No, I don't believe it has anything to do with that, no.
Anthony, I know that you have a lot of opinions about the changing nature of law enforcement, but what does it say to you that Punta Gorda has hired a new police chief that starts next month, and she comes from a department where she was the head of police training?
Well, the best way to improve an organization is by improving its participants. So I like that. I like when someone comes in and using new training tactics that are more suited to what the community believes in and what they want from their police department.
Well, obviously, the folks in Punta Gorda have really gone through the ringer in the last year or so. So we thank you both for the conversation tonight. Before we go, we want to share with you what some of you had to say about last night's show on the double standard with sexual harassment. When people in the entertainment industry get accused of sexual harassment, they're often fired from their jobs immediately, whether it be Matt Lauer or Louis C.K. But in politics, when they are accused, an investigation is done and they get to continue working. Is this fair? We went to Facebook to hear your opinions. And Vicky says it needs to be done exactly as it is done in the real world to us real people. No one is above the law. Penny says definitely a double standard. I believe innocent until proved guilty. That is the way I was raised. However, having suffered through put out or lose your job, I'm not as objective as I should be, and I would like to see all of them suspended with no pay or power until they are exonerated or found guilty. And then there is Bill, who says, I wonder when someone will demand that we take down the statue of the sailor or the nurse because it glorifies a famous sexual assault. Some of the allegations are getting ridiculous, such as he asked for my phone number or he leered at me. Bill, really? Do you have a wife? Do you have a daughter? Bet you might feel a little bit differently if they came to you with the same kind of stories so many women only now are bringing forward. This is a serious issue, and it's time for people like you to take it seriously. If you'd like to join the conversation about tonight's topic, just visit our Facebook page at facebook.com/mysuncoast.com.abc7. And FYI, you can watch past discussions on demand. They're available on Apple TV, Amazon Fire, and Roku. And for the latest on local late-breaking news, don't forget to download the updated version of our app. If your current app doesn't work, it's expired. Just go to the App Store and re-download it by searching for WWSB or My Suncoast. We want to thank our guests for being here tonight. Anthony Chambry is the former New York Police or City Commissioner of Corrections and former Florida Secretary of Juvenile Justice, and Sarah Blackwell is an employment attorney in Sarasota, best known for exposing Disney's efforts to replace American IT workers with foreigners.